All right, welcome to your HDR and panorama picture. Okay, we are in Bridge, and you can also do this from Lightroom, but we're going to start from Bridge, and we are looking at some images that we're going to use to composite for an HDR. So look in your metadata, you can see that this is +1, that this image has been overexposed by 1 stop. This is your normal exposure, and -1. You'll also notice that the aperture does not change, the shutter speed changes, which is perfect. There might be a little bit of movement, but I don't think so. This is looking pretty good. So we are going to select all 3 of these by selecting the first one and holding down the Shift and selecting the last one. And then we're going to go to Tools, Photoshop, Merge to HDR Pro. What's going to happen is that's going to open up Photoshop and going to composite them together and give us a dialog window where we have some options. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways of doing it. This is where I'll insert music. All right. So you can see. All right. So this is our HDR dialog window. Now we have a bunch of presets, including the Scott Kelby preset, which is, in my humble opinion, a little too photo illustrative and a little less traditional photographic. So you can go very surreal with it. I don't think that that white line that looks like paint looks traditional. You can go photorealistic, right? Those are, I like the photorealistic options. The photorealistic high contrast actually is not a bad option, but you can see there is some edge detailing there, some edge detail loss. So I'm going to just go to default. I'm going to start at remove ghosts. Now down at the bottom, you'll see that one thumbnail has a green outline around it. If we check on the next one, you'll see that the plants in the front move. So you can check one of these images. So if there is movement, it's here, you see how you've got a little bit of ghosting, almost like you're seeing that long shutter speed. I'm going to pick this first one, and that is going to take the information from the foreground from this thumbnail. Right? So that's the only thing that I really do. In here, the edge glow, the strength, these are where things can get a little bit crazy when you start messing with these options, and then people go in and mess with the gamma. It can get very low contrast or it can get very high contrast. Personally, I'm going to just show you how to do it the way I do it. If you want to do it any other way and experiment with these options, there are tons of videos out there. Also, chapter 7 in your book. I'm going to set this to default, remove ghosts, click on this first thumbnail, and not mess with any of these things. I'm not messing with any of these things because we've spent all of this time in the semester working with Camera Raw dialog box. So for me to apply midtone or exposure information here, detail, which is sort of like the clarity, and then to play with the shadow, highlight, vibrance, I have a dialog box that I've already used where I can make these changes, and I can do that in Camera Raw, okay? If I do it in here, so if say I do something like this, that's it. Once I push, okay, that's it. I can't come back to this. You would have to redo the entire HDR. I personally don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to go back up to default. Again, remove ghost using that first thumbnail, and I'm going to press OK. All that's going to do then is take those 3 files and put them into one file. And like I said, you can totally experiment with any of these things, but I'm going to go back to what we've been using all semester and what we have the most control over. And I like that the way we're doing it is a non-destructive way, and it takes advantage of the workflow that we've been building. So now this is very low contrast, but you can see we've got a sky, we've got detail in all of this little foliage in the front, we've got detail in all of the bricks. This is really perfectly exposed. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as HDR A, and I'm not going to save it as a PSD because I want to open it in Camera Raw. So I'm going to save it either as a JPEG or a TIFF. And that's all I'm going to do. Now, there's no image compression and there's no layers. I'm going to shut that down and go back over here. And then I just have to remember where I saved it. Where would I have saved it? On the disk. Sometimes if you make something, here's how you can find something if you can't find it. Go back to Photoshop, open Recent, and it will open it for you. And then you can go File, Save As, and do it again. There's no way I would have found that. So let's take it to a place we would find it, our desktop, and hit Save. And save it again. So now that's out there. Okay. On our desktop, we now have this beautiful HDR. And I'm going to right-click, Open in Camera Raw. And here is where I can use my histogram and I can use all of my settings that I've been using all semester. So I'm pretty fine with the white balance on that. It's kind of warm, but this is the perfect time of day for that. We don't have any real true blacks, so we definitely need to increase the black there. Kind of, let's bring that down. Let's open up the shadows. So that opens up the front, not too much. I'm going to decrease the black a little more. Go to my next tab over, which is my tonal curve. Add strong contrast. Let's see, medium contrast is probably pretty good. And then I think it's a little too saturated, so I might desaturate it just a little bit because that orange is kind of crazy. And I'm going to add some clarity to it. If you don't do the HDR toning editing in that dialog window, the images typically are a little flat, so you do need to increase the contrast, and they might not look as sharp as if you do the editing in that window either. So you want to add clarity and maybe go to sharpening, add a little bit of sharpening. But I think that looks pretty good. You can see it's definitely got a lot more oomph. And that was done primarily with the sharpening, the clarity, and making sure that you had enough contrast. And then hit done. So if you do go a little crazy with this one, now you can always double click to go back into Camera Raw. And you can say, well, you know what? I actually think a little bit less contrast. So maybe let's just go to linear. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I want to go to strong. Okay. And then you can hit done. So it is editable like that. And if you want to upload it to or email it, all you have to do is hit Save Image, and then you could save it as a JPEG in the same location. Hit Save. That applies all of those settings to that, and now you have an almost 19 megabyte size JPEG. So we would have to talk about how reducing the size of that, because this is a pretty gigantic file. Right, this is 134 megs because these are 16-bit per channel, right? A lot of color information. But if you wanted to email this, very simply, you could open it up in Photoshop, File, Save for Web. And if you're just, emailing it to a friend, or you want to put it, we will be working with Behance, the online portfolio, at the end of the semester. So if you wanted this for your Behance site, the preset I use is JPEG High. And I have JPEG, you can high, very high, maximum. I like really good quality. And then I change the image size. And I put 1,000 or 1,200 pixels. And that brings it down to a little bit shy of 800K. And then I save it. And put web in the title. And now I have a pretty large 18.53 megabyte. I have my editable TIFF, and I have a small JPEG that I could send through email or upload to my website. Right? So that's one way of doing HDR.